You gave Alex the company, I asked, barely able to keep my voice steady without even telling me. You handed the business over to Alex, I inquired, struggling to maintain a steady voice, and you didn't even inform me. My father, seated behind his massive oak desk, didn't flinch. My father, positioned at his grand oak desk, showed no reaction. He flipped through a stack of papers, barely sparing me a glance. He casually sifted through a pile of documents, hardly looking my way. He's the son, Sophia, he said. It's his role to take over. He is the male heir, Sophia, he stated. It is his rightful place to assume control. The room seemed to close in around me. I felt the space around me constrict. I gripped the back of the chair in front of me, trying to steady myself. I held on to the rear of the chair before me, attempting to regain my composure. His role, I echoed, my voice rising. Papa, I've spent years preparing for this. I know the business inside and out. Alex doesn't care about the company like I do. His position, I repeated, my voice escalating. Father, I've devoted years to getting ready for this. I'm thoroughly familiar with the business. Alex he lacks the passion for the company that I possess. Sophia, he said, his tone calm but final, this isn't about caring. It's about tradition, and tradition says the son takes over. Sophia, he uttered, his voice composed yet definitive. This isn't a matter of affection. It's about custom, and custom dictates that the male offspring My name is Sophia Ramirez, and I'm 28 years old. I am Sophia Ramirez, 28 years of age. For as long as I can remember, my father has been the most important figure in my life. Throughout my life, my father has always been the pivotal individual, stern but fair. As long as you stayed within the boundaries of his expectations, he was strict yet equitable, provided you adhered to his anticipated standards. He built our family's import-export business from nothing, and I grew up watching him pour his heart and soul into making it a success. He established our family's import-export enterprise from scratch, and I observed him dedicate himself entirely to ensuring its prosperity throughout my upbringing. By the time I was 15, I knew I wanted to be a part of it, not just a part I wanted to lead it one day. At the age of 15, I realized I desired to be involved. More than just involved, I aspired to command it someday. I worked for that dream tirelessly, relentlessly pursued that ambition. I graduated with honors, earned a degree in finance, and spent countless hours shadowing my father at work. I completed my studies with distinction, obtained a finance qualification, and dedicated innumerable hours observing my father in his professional capacity. I took on internships that gave me hands-on experience in logistics and operations. And I even started proposing changes to improve efficiency. I undertook practical work placements that provided me with direct involvement in supply chain management and business processes. And I even began suggesting modifications to boost productivity. My father always nodded approvingly at my ideas, saying things like, "You're sharp, Sophia. You'd make a great CFO one day." My father consistently showed approval for my concepts, remarking, "You're astute, Sophia. You'd be an excellent chief financial officer someday." The CFO line stung every time. It was a compliment, sure, but it was also a boundary. That mention of CFO always bothered me. It was certainly praise, but it also implied a limitation. No matter how hard I worked, how much I knew, or how passionate I was, he never once said, "You'd make a great CEO," because that role was reserved for Alex, my younger brother. Despite my diligent efforts, extensive knowledge, or profound dedication, he never uttered, "You'd be an exceptional chief executive officer," as that position was set aside for my younger sibling. Alex. Alex and I couldn't be more different. Alex and I are polar opposites. Where I was driven and disciplined, Alex was charming but lazy. While I was motivated and methodical, Alex possessed charm but lacked industry. He breezed through school with mediocre grades, more interested in soccer practice and late-night parties than studying. He navigated his education with average results, showing greater enthusiasm for football training and evening social events than for academics. When he joined the family business, he treated it like a side gig, a fallback option in case his real dreams didn't pan out. Upon entering the family enterprise, he regarded it as a casual undertaking, a contingency plan if his true aspirations failed. He'd come in late, leave early, and spend most of his time scrolling through his phone or chatting with friends in the office. He would arrive tardily, depart prematurely, and largely occupy himself with phone browse or conversations with colleagues within the workplace. Despite this, my father adored him. Nevertheless, my father held a deep affection for him. "He just needs time to grow into his role," he'd say whenever I pointed out Alex's lack of effort. "He's still young. He merely requires time to mature into his position." He would explain whenever I highlighted Alex's lack of diligence, "He's still in his youth." It was infuriating, but I kept telling myself that my work would speak for itself, that one day my father would see what I was capable of and reconsidered it. Was exasperating. Yet I continuously assured myself that my accomplishments would be self-evident, and eventually my father would recognize my capabilities and rethink his decision. But now, standing in his office, hearing him dismiss me with a wave of a hand, I realized I'd been fooling myself. However, at present, while in his office, as he casually brushed me aside, I understood I had been deluding myself. The announcement of Alex's promotion spread quickly through the company. News of Alex's advancement circulated rapidly throughout the firm. My colleagues, who had come to respect my work over the years, offered me awkward smiles and whispered words of sympathy. My coworkers, who had grown to admire my efforts over time, gave me uncomfortable grins and quiet expressions of commiseration. Even the employees who liked Alex looked uneasy. Even those staff members who favored Alex appeared uncomfortable. It was clear to everyone that he wasn't ready for this responsibility. It was apparent to all that he was unprepared for this duty. I tried to focus on my current projects, but the frustration and resentment gnawed me. I attempted to concentrate on my ongoing tasks, but feelings of annoyance and bitterness plagued me. Every time Alex made a mistake or brushed off a meeting, I felt my blood boil. Whenever Alex erred or dismissed an appointment, I experienced intense anger. He didn't even seem to care about the company's success. He was just going through the motions. secure in the knowledge that the role had been handed to him on a silver platter. He appeared indifferent to the company's prosperity. He was merely performing the minimum, confident that the position had been effortlessly granted to him. It all came to a head one afternoon when I overheard a heated conversation between Alex and one of our senior managers. The climax occurred one afternoon when I accidentally heard an intense discussion between Alex and a high-ranking manager. I was walking past the conference room when I heard raised voices. As I passed the meeting room, I heard elevated tones. "Alex, this shipment delay is going to cost us thousands," the manager said, his tone exasperated. "We need to address this now." "Alex, this postponed delivery will incur thousands in costs," the manager exclaimed, his voice filled with frustration. "We must resolve this immediately." "I'm working on it," Alex replied, his voice defensive. "It's not that big of a deal." "I'm handling it," Alex responded, his tone protective. "It's not a significant problem. Not that big of a deal," the manager shot back. "Do you even understand the implications? We're going to lose a major client if this isn't resolved." "Not a significant problem," the manager retorted. "Do you even grasp the consequences? We risk losing a crucial client if this remains unfixed." I peeked inside to see Alex slouched in his chair, avoiding the manager's gaze. I discreetly looked in to observe Alex slumped in his seat, averting the manager's stare. My heart sank. This wasn't just about tradition or favoritism anymore. Alex's inexperience and lack of commitment were putting the entire company at risk. My spirits plummeted. This was no longer solely about custom or preferential treatment. Alex's insufficient experience and disinterest were jeopardizing the entire organization that evening. I sat at my kitchen table, my laptop open in front of me. Later that night, I was at my kitchen table with my laptop displayed. I'd pulled up the company's financial reports, client contracts, and logistics records, trying to get a clearer picture of the situation. I had accessed the firm's fiscal statements, customer agreements, and supply chain data, seeking a more accurate understanding of the circumstances. The deeper I dug, the worse it looked. The more I investigated, the more dire the situation appeared. Delays, lost accounts, oversights. Alex was driving into the ground, and my father was too blinded by tradition to see it. Setbacks, forfeited clients, errors. Alex was leading the business to ruin, and my father's adherence to tradition prevented him from seeing it. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temples. I shut my computer and reclined in my seat, massaging my temples. The thought of confronting my father again filled me with dread, but I knew I couldn't stay silent. The prospect of facing my father once more filled me with apprehension. Yet, I recognized I could not remain quiet. You need not conceal yourself. Alex, I stated softly, this is not about your inadequacy. It is about prioritizing the company. He sighed, leaning against the counter. I feel like I let everyone down, especially Dad. He exhaled, propping himself against the counter. I sensed I have disappointed everyone, particularly Father. You didn't let anyone down, I said. You were put in a position you weren't ready for. That's not your fault. You did not fail anyone, I asserted. You were placed in a role for which you were unprepared. That is not your culpability. He looked at me, his expression softening. You really mean that? He gazed at me, his countenance softening. Do you truly believe that? Of course I do. You have so many strengths, Alex. Leadership just isn't one of them, and that's okay. It doesn't make you any less valuable. Absolutely. You possess numerous advantages, Alex. Leadership simply isn't among them, and that is fine. It does not diminish your worth. For the first time in years, we talked openly about the pressure he'd felt, the mistakes he'd made, and the weight of expectations. For the first time in a long while, we engaged in candid conversation regarding the stress he had experienced, the errors he had committed, and the burden of anticipation. By the end of the conversation, I could tell he felt lighter, even if he wasn't quite ready to admit it by the close of our discussion. I perceived he felt relieved, even if he was not, yet prepared to acknowledge it. As the weeks turned into months, the company began to stabilize. Over the course of weeks evolving into months, the firm started to regain equilibrium. We regained to major clients and implemented new systems to prevent the kind of mismanagement that had caused the earlier chaos. We successfully recovered 2 significant clients and introduced novel systems to avert the sort of mismanagement that had precipitated the previous disorder. My father started attending fewer meetings, trusting me to handle the day-to-day operations. My father began to participate in fewer meetings, relying on me to manage daily operations. Even Alex found his place, taking on a role in marketing where his creativity and charisma could shine without the burden of leadership. Even Alex discovered his niche, assuming a marketing position where his inventiveness and appeal could flourish unencumbered by managerial responsibilities. At night, as I sat in my office reviewing the day's work, I often felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. In the evenings, while reviewing the day's tasks in my office, I frequently experienced a blend of comfort and weariness. The journey had been anything but easy, but for the first time in my life, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be. The path had been far from simple, yet for the first time in my existence, I sensed I was precisely where I belonged. 6 months later, the business was unrecognizable in the best way. Half a year subsequent, the enterprise was transformed for the better. Systems were running smoothly. Client relationships were stronger than ever. And the morale among employees had visibly improved. Operations were efficient. Customer bonds were more robust than at any previous time, and employee spirits had noticeably elevated. I'd worked hard to rebuild the trust that had been fractured, and the results were starting to show. I had exerted considerable effort to restore the damaged confidence, and the outcomes were becoming apparent. Every success, big or small, felt like a validation. not just of my leadership, but of my worth. Each achievement, whether minor or significant, felt like an affirmation, not merely of my executive abilities, but of my inherent value. For the first time, I felt truly confident in my role. For the initial time, I felt genuinely assured in my position. The doubt that had haunted me for years, the feeling that I needed to prove myself, was fading. The uncertainty that had plagued me for years, the sensation of needing to demonstrate my capabilities, was diminishing. I knew I belonged here. Every decision I made, every problem I solved, solidified that belief. I understood my place was here. Each choice I made, every issue I resolved, reinforced that conviction. It wasn't about pleasing my father or outshining Alex anymore. It was about doing what I loved and doing it well. It was no longer about satisfying my father or surpassing Alex. It was about engaging in what I enjoyed and excelling at it. My father had changed too. My father had also undergone a transformation. He no longer hovered over my decisions or questioned my judgment. He no longer scrutinized my choices or doubted my discernment. Instead, he asked for updates with genuine curiosity and offered advice only when I sought it out. Instead, he inquired about progress with sincere interest and provided counsel only when solicited. One afternoon, he stopped by my office, a rare visit these days. One afternoon, he briefly visited my office, an uncommon occurrence recently. I was going through the old client records, he said, leaning against the door frame. You brought back a client we lost 5 years ago. I couldn't do that, but you did. I was examining the past client files, he remarked, propped against the door frame. You reacquired a client we had forfeited half a decade ago. I was unable to achieve that, but you succeeded. I smiled, feeling a warmth I hadn't expected. Thanks, Papa. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was worth it. I smiled, experiencing an unanticipated warmth. Thank you, Father. It was challenging, yet I was certain of its value. He nodded, his expression softening. I'm proud of you, Sophia. You've done more for this company than I ever could have imagined. He nodded, his countenance becoming gentler. I am proud of you, Sophia. You have accomplished more for this company than I could have ever envisioned. Hearing those words from him, after everything we'd been through, was more satisfying than I could have hoped. Receiving those words from him, subsequent to all our shared experiences, was more gratifying than I had dared to wish. It wasn't just about the business anymore. It was about his respect, something I'd spent my whole life cheesing. It ceased to be solely about the enterprise. It concerned his esteem, a pursuit I had dedicated my entire life to. Alex was thriving too. In his own way, Alex also flourished in his unique manner. He'd embraced his role in marketing, using his creativity and natural charm to bring fresh ideas to the company. He had taken to his marketing position, employing his ingenuity and inherent charisma to introduce novel concepts to the firm. He even started pitching new campaigns to me during our meetings. And while we didn't always agree, there was a new sense of collaboration between us. He even began presenting fresh campaigns to me during our discussions, and although we did not invariably concur, a newfound spirit of cooperation emerged between us. For the first time, we weren't competing. We were working together. For the first time, we were not in opposition. We were cooperating. At home. Things felt lighter. At home. The atmosphere felt less burdensome. Family dinners were no longer filled with tension, and my father had started asking about my ideas and plans, listening in a way he never had before. Family meals were no longer fraught with strain, and my father had begun inquiring about my concepts and intentions, paying attention in a manner he had never previously done. Even my mother, who had always stayed quiet during these debates, began chiming in with encouragement and praise. Even my mother, who had consistently remained silent throughout these arguments, started offering words of support and commendation. One evening, as I walked through the office after hours, I stopped by the conference room and looked out at the view of the city lights. One night, while traversing the office after closing, I paused at the conference room and observed the cityscape illuminated. Was my company now, not because it had been handed to me, but because I'd earned it. This was now my enterprise, not due to its being bestowed upon me, but because I had merited it. I thought about the girl I'd been 6 months ago, angry, overlooked, and unsure of her place. I reflected on the person I was half a year prior, resentful, disregarded, and uncertain of her standing. That girl was gone. In her place was someone stronger, more confident, and unafraid to fight for what she deserved. That individual no longer existed. In her stead stood someone more resilient, more self-assured, and fearless in advocating for her rightful due. This was just the beginning. There were more challenges ahead, more mountains to climb, but I knew I could face them. This was merely the genesis. Further obstacles lay ahead, more arduous tasks to undertake, yet I was certain I could confront them. The company was thriving, my family was healing, and I was finally living the life I'd always envisioned. Not by chance, but by choice. The business prospered, my family mended, and I was at last living the existence I had consistently imagined, not through serendipity, but by deliberate decision. As I turned off the lights and locked the office for the night, I felt a deep sense of peace. As I extinguished the lights and secured the office for the evening, I experienced a profound tranquility. This wasn't just my victory, it was my future, and I couldn't wait to see what came next. This was not solely my triumph. It was my forthcoming, and I eagerly anticipated what lay beyond.